Hey there, and welcome to Build Explain. Today's subject, wood. Specifically wood in Valheim, and why it doesn't suck. Well, as bad as you think it does. Before we get into the how-tos and nuances of making the best of Valheim's most basic building material, let's go over some data and how to apply it. And for my architect friends only interested in the build itself, feel free to skip to the Getting Started timestamp. Obtained by harvesting trees, saplings, bushes, and random stick pickups, wood is one of, if not the very first resource you'll gather in your playthrough. It boasts a weight of £1 per piece, stacks up to 50, and will most likely be your most farmed building resource. It's used in a copious amount of crafting recipes from bows to beds, as well as the primary subject of today's video, structures. Each wooden structure shares these common stats. It has resistances of weak to chop damage, neutral versus blunt / fire, frost, and lightning damage. It resists pierce damage and is totally immune to poison and spirit damage. It has a durability health bar of 400, and by using this information and the known damage numbers of enemies means wood structures can take a total of 40 hits from a boar, 67 hits from a neck, 80 hits from a greyling, 17 hits from a grey dwarf, 14 hits from a brute, or 7 hits from a troll. And before I get into the maximum and minimum support values of wood, I need to go over how those values are used and how the amount of support in attached objects is determined. So, Valheim doesn't really have gravity per se when building, but it does have an in-depth support mechanic which I'll do my best to explain. And credit to the Valheim fandom wiki for most of this information, which I will include a link to in the description below. First, let's go over Valheim's support indicator system. When building, you'll notice that when you look at a place structure with the hammer equipped, it will highlight with a color. If the structure is touching the ground, it will highlight blue, meaning it is 100% supported, or at max support. If you build out from the structure with something of identical material, you'll notice that the color of this new piece will shift to green. As you continue to build out or up, the colors will gradually shift from blue to green to red. If the piece is dark red, that means you're at or close to the limit of the minimum support value, and the next thing you place will instantly break. If you're starting your build with a higher quality material, such as stone, the stone has a higher maximum support to give wood, and will always give the wood 100% support. This allows you to build higher and wider when using the correct sequence of materials. Next, let's go over the real nerdy stuff and go over support calculations and parents. No, not the genetic material donors who grow ever more disappointed in you while you waste away making YouTube videos about niche building mechanics. Parent structures. Parent structures are any building piece that you've already placed and will place your next build piece on. For instance, if I place this support beam on the ground and then place this floor on top of the support beam, the beam has now become a parent structure, and for the sake of clarity, the floor has become a child structure, and the point of contact between the two structures is called the support point. Just a small note, any piece can both be a child to one piece and a parent to another. This means any piece can be a child and a parent at the same time. The parent structure determines the amount of support that the child structure receives by using the Pythagorean theorem to calculate the distance from the midpoint of the parent structure to the midpoint of the child structure. It also calculates the support value by taking consideration of vertical or horizontal loss. In simple terms, this means that there are very different amounts of support lost when the child structure is placed horizontally or vertically from the parent structure. Typically, horizontal placement will result in greater loss of support than vertical placement. If the child structure has multiple parents, unlike some of you, the calculation is similar, but only the vertical loss is used for support calculations. For example, if I wanted to build this floating stone floor, usually stone floors have a 100% horizontal loss ratio, meaning if I place a child stone floor onto a parent stone floor, but the child stone floor has no contact with the ground or higher grade material, the child will instantly die. Break. However, if I use a stronger material as a parent structure, such as an iron cage wall, the game no longer calculates the horizontal loss and will allow me to build up to a 7x7 platform while only leaving supports on the corners. small side note, Valheim actually uses a dynamic check to calculate every structure support value every time a piece is changed, so destroyed or created. It checks this every half second and will recalculate the parent to child support values at a maximum of 50 pieces at a time. This is why it may take a few minutes to actually foundation wipe a very large structure, because the game is actually limited on how many calculations it can perform at the same time. I assume this is to prevent game crashes and server griefing when players want to destroy an entire build, but this can also be abused in our favor slightly to build otherwise impossible structures. Anyway, all of that gibberish just to say that wood has a maximum of 100 support and a minimum of 10. The maximum support of 100 means that wood can only support wood because it can only ever give 100 support or less to a child structure. And the minimum of 10 means that wood can be supported by literally any other build piece so long as the parent structure still has 10 or more support to give. Another handy value to have is the vertical and horizontal loss fractions, this being 1/8 and 1/5 respectively. This means that a basic wood structure lose 1/8 of their stability every time you place something on top, and 1/5 of their stability when you place something to the side. Or simply, wood structures can be built 8 pieces high and 5 pieces wide before needing another parent structure or a stronger material. Alright, now back to the content you came for. Wood. Individually, they aren't exactly the most attractive build pieces in the game, but when we're starting out, that's what we have to work with, and just because the separate pieces don't really activate the neurons, doesn't mean we can't create something worthy of being a nostalgic landmark after we've journeyed far from the starting island. So for the sake of proving that you don't need a 50-hour character to build something gorgeous, I'm going to go ahead and start a new save today. And the first thing we're going to want to do is explore. We're going to go find the closest body of water to the boss stones and hope we can scout out a decently flat area rich with trees for wood, and along the way, let's go ahead and grab some mushrooms and berries for basic food for stamina, which is going to be really important for all the trees we're going to have to chop. Now that we've found the perfect location, let's start with the basics of the basics. First, we're going to gather some stones and branches from the ground for our tools. We're going to need an axe, a hammer, and a club. You know, for reasons. Now let's get started gathering our resources. Early on, the most time-efficient way of gathering wood is going to be by farming saplings in groups. Trees are going to take a few more hits to yield around the same amount of profit. Once we have about a stack of wood, the first build we are going to make is going to be a workbench station. If you didn't already know, workbenches are required for just about everything in this game. Want to build? Need a workbench. Want to craft some cool gear? You need a workbench. Want to repair this dog doo-doo axe we made? You need a workbench. Not only that, but for some unholy reason, the workbench needs to be sheltered, because God forbid we feel the warm ocean breeze as we work. Let's start by placing a workbench anywhere nearby. Then, while on standing side of the workbench's radius, let's put a floor on the highest ground in the area we want to make the station. Connect one or more floor using the auto snap feature to make a 2x1 platform. Now we're going to use the destroy hotkey on the workbench. Don't worry, anytime a structure is broken with the hammer, the materials aren't lost. You can simply just pick them up again. Now, replace the workbench onto the platform. Place the walls on all sides except for one log side. Now place half walls on the two existing walls on the other long side, followed by two 26-degree thatch roofs on top. Fill in the open spaces with 26-degree angled walls, and we should have a usable workbench to repair our tools. And since there are no repair costs in Valheim, we're going to use the station continuously to repair our tools while we build our first home. Hey there. Brief intermission while I farm a ton of trees and before we start building. One of the most important things I want you to take away from this channel is I'm not trying to teach you to copy my exact builds. You absolutely can if you want, but I want to give you the tools to bring your concepts to life so that you can experience this medium of art to its fullest extent. Now that we've farmed a obscene amount of wood, let's start the planning stage. So, unlike real life, when building in games, we don't need a blueprint to follow to make sure everything is just right, but we do need the build to fit our needs. That being said, because I'm autistic, I made a blueprint. For this build specifically, I want to make sure I have a room for a bedroom, a kitchen, a storage area, a crafting room, a portal room, and a dock for future exploration. Now that we have a basic idea of what we're going to be building, in what shape, if you'll think back, we made a conscious decision to build our first floor piece on the highest terrain in our work area. We're going to do that again, except first, let's craft a hoe at the workbench so we can use it to level the terrain out in our work area. This is also really nice for getting rid of the grass, because sometimes the random generation causes grass to spawn through your floors, and that's not really the aesthetic we're going for. We want a nice clean look, so let's make sure we get all that tall grass down as well. One more thing, if you found yourself in an area like myself, where the beach is uneven, the terrain is uneven, and a build this big isn't really going to fit well, you can also use the hoe and any stone that you have built up over the course of harvesting all those sticks off the ground to actually use it to bring the terrain up higher than you would normally be able to by using the level function on the hoe. This way we can ensure that the building is going to have enough support for all the pieces later down the line. I'm going to go ahead and lay out the basic floor plan and put down support beams where needed, taking note of where the terrain needs to be raised to make sure that we don't have stability issues down the line. Also, I prefer an alternating pattern in the floor just to add a little extra detail to the interior of my house, plus I just think it looks nice. Another quick tip for you guys is if you're having trouble getting these objects to lock in where you want them to, try cycling their snapping options by pressing Q and E. Play around with these often because it can save you a lot of headache when building in weird terrain or heights. But around here, I realized that all the resources that I had gathered, they were going to be a problem, so I decided to perform a magic trick. Don't worry about it. Once the floor plan is down, we're going to start on the walls. I want this house to have a loft-like area for the bedroom, so I'm only going to make the walls too high. That way we still have enough stability later to get a roof over our heads. We'll decide where the door and windows look best later, so I'm just going to fill in the whole structure for now. It'll also keep the gremlins out while we build. And for good measure, we're going to go ahead and build a fire outside since Greylings hate campfire stories. Once the external walls are up, let's figure out where we're going to put the loft. Since Valheim requires a fire to sleep, I'm going to put it above the kitchen and allow the eventual chimney to feed through the bedroom to make sure the house is fully functional. But let's just do a few stairs and an extra layer of floors and walls for now. For the storage room, we actually made it a little bit shorter than the rest of the building. That way, from the outside, it looks like we have layers to our building, which is actually going to add some character and detail to our build. You may have already known this, but while you've been building, maybe it started raining. And maybe you've noticed that while it was raining, that the wood structures have all started degrading. Valheim has a weathering mechanic, where if a wood structure is built without a roof overhead, it will begin to degrade and change color and shape. Don't worry though, these affected structures will only lose 50% of their health and can be repaired in the future. But let's go ahead and start working on the roof layout to prevent more issues. While we're still on the bottom floor, and now that we have a better idea of where we want our doors to go, let's go ahead and take care of that, and make sure that they all have good framing and spacing so that they look correct. I really want this build to be more of a cozy cabin rather than a fort, and one of the ways we can reach for that aesthetic is by rounding our roof and not using corner pieces when they aren't absolutely necessary. So for the main roof, we're going to initially use steep 45-degree pieces for the first layer, then we'll switch up to 26 degrees for the next 2 layers to give the illusion of that rounded roof we were looking for. You may have noticed from the building plan that this is actually supposed to be a balcony. However, while recording this, I realized we didn't have quite enough stability to make a roof over the balcony, so this upgrade is going to have to wait until the next video. While we're here, let's go ahead and place down our bed and set our respawn point, just in case a workplace accident happens. Now that we have a roof over our heads, and since this video is already getting quite long, I think I'm going to break up the interior decoration and the actual finer details into a second video. So, if you've enjoyed what you've seen today, leave a like, subscribe, comment, throw hate mail, whatever you gotta do. And tune into the next video to figure out how I actually turn this basic structure into something beautiful. Anyways, thanks guys.